Are you new to YouTube? Do you use your cell phone for videos like these folks? Or this guy? Or you're a GoPro user because you do a lot of action sports. You may be rollerblading like these folks. Is the Sony ZV-1 a step up from the GoPro and the cell phone videos? In this video, we're gonna find out. Now, this sensor in the GoPro Hero 8 is a lot smaller than this sensor in the S20 FE and a lot smaller than the Sony ZV-1. Both of these are less expensive than the Sony ZV-1. This is the Samsung S20 FE, which stands for Fan Edition. What they did was they crammed a bunch of higher end specs and some lower end specs and mid-tier specs into an S20. Huge screen, only goes up to 1080p. It does shoot in 4K 60 on the front and the rear camera. These two are about the same price, about 400, 500 bucks. And a GoPro is about $300 to $400. The Sony ZV-1 is $700 to $800. So is this worth upgrading from these? Let me tell you, I went on a road trip from here in South Florida. We flew out to Vegas. Then from Vegas, we drove to Cali. From Cali, we drove to Flagstaff, Arizona. From Flagstaff, we drove to the Grand Canyon. From the Grand Canyon, we drove to Denver. From Denver, we drove to Roswell, New Mexico. And another place in New Mexico, we drove to New Orleans. And then we came back home. About a 10-day trip, driving one way. Flew one way and drove the other way. I wanted to see how much difference the quality is in these three cameras. Let's check out some of the cell phone footage that I got. First from the front camera, then from the rear camera. So here's the front camera. You see it's okay quality. It's not a the camera on this phone is probably the weakest point of the phone, in my opinion. Both the front and the rear camera. When I switch to the rear camera, here's the rear camera. You can see that it's noisy. It's very noisy. Now, granted, it wasn't an airport, so it wasn't super bright. It wasn't very well lit, but you can see that the camera is very noisy. Now, that was in Vegas. We flew to Vegas. So first was the airport, which, let me tell you, flying with camera gear, because I have my Fuji X-s10 with me, all my lenses and stuff, that was a little nerve-wracking, not gonna lie. Thought they were gonna stop me because I have probably like 5 or 6 batteries for the ZV-1 and the X-s10. So I thought, okay, they're gonna stop me because I had a bunch of batteries, I have a bunch of stuff in there. Went through smoothly, no problem. Very happy with that. TSA was very smooth, very easy, no problems. I didn't take very many videos in Vegas just because we didn't spend much time there. We walked around for a few minutes and then we left because we really wanted to go to Cali. But Cali has a mandatory quarantine for 10 days. So we were supposed to fly into Cali. We didn't fly into Cali because of that 10-day quarantine. We didn't have 10 days just to spend before we can even move. So to play it safe, we canceled our flight, which sucked because we lost money. We canceled our flight and we flew into Vegas because Vegas had no restrictions like that. So we flew into Vegas just to get to Cali and then drive back. Now in Cali, we went to the Hollywood sign, we went to Santa Monica Boulevard, drove past. We didn't really stop because it was a lot of people. Parking was crazy. So we just drove past. I just wanted to see it. I mean, I live in South Florida, so the beaches are normal. It's just, I just wanted to see the pier, the Santa Monica Pier. So we looked at it. It was nice from a distance. Took a shot, you know, nothing major. And then we went to the Hollywood sign. In the Hollywood sign, I shot some video. Check out my Hollywood sign video. Now, as you see, nice. They both look pretty comparable. In that video, in this video, you're gonna see that the GoPro, it looked like it had a lot more dynamic range. You can tell that in the sky, which I was very surprised about. I thought for sure the ZV-1 would have been more capable of handling that dynamic range. Now, also keep in mind that I didn't adjust any settings. These are straight out of camera. These are, you get them out the box. You said, I want to learn, I just want to shoot. You're just going to shoot. Now, can you tweak these both and make them look better? Of course. I didn't do that because most people are not going to do that. You know, most people are just going to take it out of the box and say, okay, let's go. I want to shoot. And they're just going to start shooting whatever they want to shoot. So yes, you can get better footage out of the camera on my cell phone. There is a pro mode in photo and video where you can adjust the ISO, you can adjust the shutter. I believe you can adjust the shutter, you know, and all those settings like a DSLR or a mirrorless camera. But in low light, or barely any light, no light, you're just going to shoot in auto. So you're going to let the camera take control. Right now my XS10 is in manual, so I have those all set, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm not moving. The lighting is controlled. The lighting, when you're moving around, the lighting is not controlled. So if you go manual, you might have to be fiddling with settings. Who wants to fiddle with settings? Who wants to change settings in the middle of recording? You just want to record and keep it moving. So that's how I shot all these videos. I shot them just in the standard profile, just in, they were all in 4K. I shot them all in 4K 30. They were all shot on auto, full auto. You see how they all handle just being turned on and pressing record. After Cali, we went to the Grand Canyon. Now, of course, like I told you, we stopped in Flagstaff only for the night to rest and be ready for the next day. So we went to the Grand Canyon. Here's my video of the Grand Canyon. You can see these both side by side. Now, even there, it's amazing. The one thing I will say is I did have an ND filter. I don't know if you guys can see it, but I did have an ND filter on the front of my ZV-1. It's a huge ND filter, a 72mm. So you can see some of it because of how wide the lens is on the Hero. I don't like the GoPro look too much, so I did shoot some wide and I did change it to linear. I changed it to linear to kind of get closer to what the ZV-1 was seeing. But even in linear, the GoPro has a much wider viewing angle. This I just shot in the widest that it has. My camera phone, I just shot in the widest that it had. So I didn't change anything there. Next up, the UFO Museum in Roswell, New Mexico. From New Mexico to New Orleans. Now, I wanted to see how these cameras handle low light. Keep in mind, again, I had a filter on my ZV-1. Of course, I didn't have a filter. I don't have filters for my Hero 8, but I had a filter on this. Here's a low light comparison of these two cameras in New Orleans, Louisiana. what did I take from all this? You guys saw all the footage. All in all, what I want to say is I will not use this for any videos that I wanted to edit or put out there unless I needed to in a pinch, or something live, or something that I needed to show and I couldn't get to a computer. I wouldn't use my cell phone. Now, these two, I would use either one of them, to be honest. The major benefit of this one to me, the ZV-1, is the flip out screen. The battery life is way better than the battery life on my Hero. I don't know if it's just a bad battery, but the battery dies so fast. This battery, or these batteries, I have several of them, but these batteries, I had it on even when I wasn't recording, and it wasn't even close to being how dead the Hero 8. Now, it's a small battery in the Hero 8, but still, the battery does not last long at all. And of course, there's no front screen. Now you can see the screen in the back. I also have like a little mirror thing that you can put on there. I don't like it. But in a pinch, or for like time lapses or anything like that, instant action shots, the Hero 8 is an awesome little camera. Hero 9 has the same size sensor. I had somebody that mentioned that saying, oh, you can just get a GoPro that has a 5K sensor and all this stuff, and I'm like, but the sensor is tiny. Now, granted, the sensor is not that much bigger, but it's bigger in the ZV-1. It's even bigger on my cell phone than the GoPro. The sensor is even bigger there. But when I say I love the sound that comes out of this camera, the picture that comes out of this camera. I like the colors more. The colors are a bit saturated coming out of the Hero. If you noticed, the colors are a bit saturated coming out of the GoPro, and the colors to me are more natural, a little bit better. Still, you know, I think my Fuji that I'm shooting this on, I mean, with all the film simulations, you can find the color that you want. Somebody says M50. What I would like to do is get an M50 Mark II and compare it to the XS10. If you guys are interested in that video, leave a comment down below and let me know you want to see the XS10 versus the M50 Mark II. I know the M50, I had the M50 before this camera, and a lot of people love the M50. I mean, I loved it for 1080p, but for 4K or upgrading or moving forward, to me, I just felt like it was in a different league. And to me, the XS10 has so many features that makes it a very capable little camera. Now, it's not the highest end, you know, it's not the highest end full frame camera or the highest end even Fuji camera, but it has a lot of good features and it takes really good video. The one thing I do love about the ZV-1 again over the XS10 is that autofocus. The autofocus on the ZV-1, Sony's autofocus is just amazing. And I'm seeing that just out of this little camera because I've never shot another Sony camera. So if every other Sony camera has autofocus like this or better, I mean, you can't go wrong with a Sony camera. You can't. So in closing, this is an excellent vlogging camera. Now, there is an adapter that I would get, which is another reason I have this adapter ring on it. You can also adapt a lens on there that will make it wider. So if it was a little bit wider, it would be perfect. The microphones on the top, which are the little wind muff that it comes with, it also has a mic jack. This you would need the media mod or an adapter to make the mic work, to make an external mic work on the Hero 8. I would just save up a little bit more, get the ZV-1. You have better battery life. You have the flip out LCD screen. You have the mic input. You have an HDMI out, just that with the wind muff, or even an external microphone on the top, and you're set. This has been 2XR. What do you guys think of this video? Please don't forget to subscribe. Peace.